Tighten up.
Yep.
I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body. And that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching a tasty pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
Online and one-on-one coaching. Mr. USA 2001, Quincy Taylor. 4 times Mr. Olympia athlete. Show preparation and general fitness. 30 years of experience. Bring out your monster. myteqt1@gmail.com. @Quincy.monster.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. So glad you can join us like you do week in and week out. I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We're going to bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, yesterday on After Hours, and so many of our conversations seemingly start on Ask Dave about yesterday's episode of After Hours, and oftentimes they tend to be a bit on the goofy side of the conversation scale, but you know, Greg Valentino really kind of went on a good, solid rant yesterday. Now, for those that are watching After Hours, and really for those that have gotten to know Greg Valentino, most know him really as one of the best storytellers in bodybuilding. And you could say, you know, someone just with a unique sense of humor, unique comedic sense, and that's really what he's become known for. But you know, if you watched that episode yesterday, and specifically towards the end of the episode where he really goes on a nice long run, Greg Valentino, for those that may not be fully aware, has been around bodybuilding for longer than many who are watching the show have been alive. If something happened in the prehistoric, he was there.
Yeah.
But, you know, what I thought yesterday was really cool about the episode is that, you know, Greg really kind of put his expertise on the line. He really kind of put his experience on the line. And you know, we were talking about obviously a very serious topic, and really has been an ongoing topic, unfortunately, in the bodybuilding world. And that has been essentially, you know, what's behind this unfortunate recent, rash of deaths in the bodybuilding world. And, you know, he offered his insights in a manner where I think many were kind of caught off guard, really how much he's seen, how much he has experienced throughout the course of being in this industry. So for those that haven't seen it yet, and again, that episode is live right now on the RxMuscle YouTube channel, you know, if you can encapsulate sort of what Greg was talking about in terms of what he has seen and experienced, applying that to, I guess, the recent rash of deaths in bodybuilding.
Well, I think people should listen to Greg's words themselves, but you know, at the end of the day, you know, guys are just trying to get too big, and that's what Greg thinks, you know, and your heart can only handle so much stress, you know, and it has nothing to do with body fat, you know. He was actually, the analogy he made was that sometimes fat people can live a healthier lifestyle than a 300 plus pound bodybuilder who has almost no body fat, because the heart really works harder to pump blood to functioning muscle as opposed to fat cells that really don't do very much. So, you know, and I'm of the same belief. You know, I think that a 20 and 30-year-old body can probably handle a lot of mass on it. I think the heart can handle it, the organ system can handle it, especially if you're going for health checks, keeping your blood pressure under control. I think it's when you hit that 40-year mark that, you know, you're probably not, you know, doing your body a service to be that big for that, you know, 40s and 50s and 60s, because that puts the organs just don't handle it as well. That's when things start breaking. I always tell people that's when you hit 40s when things start breaking and they don't fix. They break in your 30s, but it seems like your body can kind of fix them a little bit. But in your 40s, it doesn't. They don't fix, and you have to, like, you know, that's when you start getting surgeries and replacements and stuff like that. So you have to take that into consideration. That's why when I hit about 35, that's when I said, okay, you know what, I'm going to back down the size, and I progressively over the next, you know, 15 years, you know, brought my body weight down while keeping my body fat low. My body fat was always pretty low. So the key is to take that strain off the organ system. And I think what Greg was saying is that guys are going longer. They're not stopping in the late 30s. They're going into their 40s and 50s now. And it's just too much strain for the body. So it's not the drugs. A lot of people, the drugs definitely don't help. Obviously, they definitely put a strain on the body, and they definitely, there's a toxicity issue with them, and there's other side effects that they may exacerbate. But the bottom line is, because guys used drugs in the 80s and 90s, and they weren't dropping dead, but they weren't that big. And I think the size issue is something that people have to take into consideration. And once again, Greg and I are both not anti-steroid. We're both pro-steroid in the sense that they can be used responsibly. Irresponsible usage is obviously not something we would encourage, but it's your body weight. People always ask why Dexter Jackson lasted so long at such a high level. His body weight was never that high, compared to what some of these other guys were. He kind of stayed around the same size. He'd add a pound or two of quality muscle here or there, but he was never a 300-pound guy, and I think that's why he held up so long. And when you see guys that are guys that have longevity in sport, they're not guys that are enormous. They're not the huge guys. I'm trying to think. Vince Taylor, he was big, but he never really got. He was never 280 or something like that. He looked a lot bigger than he really was. So guys that have longevity are guys that once again, don't overdo things drug-wise usually, and who go for health checks, and who don't have their body weight at that level. Now, if you're 5'2" and you're 250, that's just as bad as being 5'10" and 320. So, and look at I was 320 pounds, in my 20s, and then when I hit my 30s, I probably wasn't really going over 285 at that point, and I stayed a lot leaner. But then at 35, I brought my weight down to 250, and then down to 220, 230 range for a number of years, and then as in my 40s, it was under that. So it was an interesting. I never even thought of it from that perspective till Greg really brought it up, but it definitely has to be considered. Now you throw COVID and you throw vaccine stuff and all these other little doohickeys on top of all that, and that's another quote strain on the body. So the body can only take so much, and so that's something that you really need to consider as you get older. Maybe it's not the best idea to be 300 pounds, at 45 years old. Something to think about.
So again, that episode of After Hours on the RxMuscle YouTube channel. If you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of those shows or future episodes. Go to the first two questions, of course, from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, your thoughts on a video from Jordon Peterson in 2017 that Nick Trigilli put on his channel, saying that 5 grams test was needed to get to the Olympia top level 700 primo. Very interested in your opinion as you have coached at the elite levels of bodybuilding.
You know what? That's bullshit. There is no how much drugs you need to. There's no minimum. There's no definitive value because everyone's body responds completely different. I can guarantee you that Tony Freeman, when I worked with him and he was at the elite level, winning shows and placing, top 5 at the Olympia, he was not using anything near that. So that's ridiculous. Are there guys that probably use that much? I'm sure there are. There's maniacs out there that overdo everything, but that's absolutely not true. And it's actually probably irresponsible to put that information out there. I know, the guys who we're talking about here who are talking about this information, and everyone who's involved in the sport and knows the top guys know that these guys are not all using that amount of stuff. And it's, once again, it's actually, I think it's actually almost like it's disrespectful to put that out there as like everyone's using this stuff. That's not true. Absolutely not true.
Second question, again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Can you do a short overview of DHB?
DHB is a metabolite of equipoise or boldenone. And theoretically, it's supposed to be, quote, more anabolic. But, the term anabolic is very relative. And I want to just clarify something. When you say that, when you have a take testosterone, for instance, and we kind of have the two components of testosterone, which you really can't separate, but we do for the sake of conceptually understanding it. We have the anabolic, which is the muscle building component, and the androgenic component, which is the masculinizing component, the aggression component, the component that mostly causes side effects, in people. And testosterone is like 1 to 100. They kind of rate these at 100. Now, what they did was they created anabolic steroids like equipoise, like DECA, was they try to keep more anabolic, less androgenic to make it what we would call an anabolic steroid, right? More muscle building, less of the side effects. But every time you remove androgen, you remove anabolic portion. So while equipoise and DECA have more anabolic compared to androgenic components than testosterone, they're still lower than testosterone. So testosterone is still the most anabolic property. So a lot of people say about, this compound that it's more anabolic than testosterone. It's not, okay? Nothing is. So that's number one. Number two, it actually has a decent amount of toxicity if you look at the way it functions. And that's something that I'm not too thrilled about. I've used equipoise. I really like equipoise, also known as boldenone. That's the generic name of it. And I think it works really, really well when combined with testosterone. It enhances appetite, it increases red blood cell counts, gives you a good pump. And I personally have not used the DHB version of the metabolite of equipoise, but I know people who have, and I just don't see the same results. So once again, I think it's one of these things that people are always trying to rediscover something new that wasn't there before, and maybe this is a better way to do it. I don't think it is. I mean, you could try it yourself. I've read, a lot of stuff online about it. And I hate doing that because a lot of times you can't really tell who knows what they're talking about. But I've read some of the research stuff. And a lot of the papers that they do on these things, these research papers, are very short-term studies, like a week, and in animal models. And so you really can't equate that to humans. It doesn't really apply. It's not a realistic type of thing because, if you give, just taking equipoise, for instance, if you give a horse 50 milligrams of equipoise, it's like giving a human like 1,000 milligrams of equipoise. As a matter of fact, if you give a horse more than 50 milligrams, they go crazy and lose their mind. And you can only do that like once every 3 weeks. I knew horse trainers that work with them. Horses are very sensitive. So different animal models are sensitive to different type of compounds. Once again, I don't think it's anything novel. I wouldn't get all excited about it like, holy shit, a brand new compound that we all should get on and start using because it's better than what's out there. I'm not gonna agree with that statement. One thing I do want to say is a lot of people have asked me about the Dave Palumbo Experience app, and that's something you can subscribe to. It's $29 a month through your iTunes store or Android store. You get basically Dave Palumbo as a coach in your pocket. You can ask unlimited questions. We answer them in a public forum on the app. I do a Q&A just like we're doing right now, a separate video that's unique to the app members. Every week, we put a workout up there every week, and all my videos and all my writings that I've ever done is in like a library format there, so you can check that out as well. Also, I want to mention that the Secrets to Becoming a Diet Guru course I teach, which is going to teach people how to be a coach, right diets, understand the science of it, supplementation, drug cycles, everything that you could possibly ever want to know about being a diet coach in a one-day course from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. with an hour for lunch. That's going to be May 7th. So you're not going to want to miss that. That's online. You can get the link through my DavePalumbo.com website. You can sign up. It's great. There's the great advantage of doing it online also is that you can watch the replay of the stuff even after. I have guys that have watched it 10 times after I did the course, and they say every time they watch it, they pick up something that they missed the first time. So it's a great resource if you're looking to be a coach. If you're already a coach and you want to educate yourself, here's an opportunity to do it. And you know what? It's tax deductible. If you're paying a lot of money in taxes because you're doing a lot of coaching and you're collecting a lot of money, you just write this off your taxes. It's continuing education. It's a no-brainer. Even the best coaches should take a course like this because I wish someone else gave a course like this so I could take it because it always gets new ideas going in your head and it helps solidify the science of what's going on in terms of getting people in the best shape of their lives. So I wanted to just mention that as well.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Again, if you're not already following us there, the handle is official_RxMuscle. Let's go to Luffy Sama. Is it wise to start trend high in a 12-week prep from 10 to 4 weeks to build muscle, or I mean 10 to 14, I think that's what he meant, and lower it from 4 weeks on just for the cosmetic look and for better sleep quality? Asking for a friend.
It's interesting. I've been doing a lot of, I don't know if you want to call it experimentation with different clients and different doses of trenbolone over the last like 2 years or so. And, I kind of got sucked into a little bit higher dosages because that's what a lot of people were doing for a while. But I sell a kit, on my DavePalumbo.com website called Roy Test. It tests whether your drugs are real or not. There's also what's something called a semi-quantitative test. And one of the semi-quantitative tests for trenbolone and anthate, it can give you the proper dosage. So if you test your product and you have a highly dosed or normally, legitimately dosed product, I found that 50 milligrams of tren acetate 3 times a week or 100 milligrams of tren and anthate twice a week is the ideal dosage in sense of getting the most benefits out of trenbolone, which is aggression, glycogen loading, strength in the gym, building of muscle, with the least side effects. And the side effects being, like you mentioned, inability to sleep. Now, anyone who takes any kind of trenbolone metabolite is going to have a little problem falling asleep, but it's nothing that you can't overcome with something like GABA or melatonin. I have guys take my Somalize product before bed, and they sleep fine on it. But you're not taking excessive amounts, so it's not completely making you nuts. The worst side effects of trenbolone and taking too much of it is that you get indigestion a lot of times. Some people get chronic hiccups from it. Some people get an upset stomach. They get diarrhea because it really aggravates the GI tract if you take too much of it. Also, if you take too much of it, you're going to elevate your prolactin levels really high, which can cause prolactin-induced gynecomastia, which can cause discharge from the nipples. It can also really kill your ability to have an erection. When we first started taking trenbolone, at least back in the 90s when I did for the first time, and we didn't even use tren and acetate. There was none. It was just Parabone, which was tren, the long-acting tren. And you would get so incredibly, hypersexual on that stuff that when I heard that people said they couldn't get an erection taking trenbolone, I didn't understand it. But we only took 76 milligrams twice a week of the long-acting, because that's what they came in ampules. People took 2 ampules a week. That's about 150 milligrams. So the guys today are taking so much that it's really jacking prolactin up. Deca raises prolactin a lot more than trenbolone does. So when I hear someone losing their sex drive on trenbolone, I know they're taking way too much. That's the litmus test really there. Because the androgenic component of trenbolone is so high that you should have a really good sex drive and you should not lose an erection for sure while you're having sex. So that's something that I think a lot of people have really abused. And there is a fine line between abuse and use of trenbolone, specifically that drug, because of the side effects that are associated with it. Also, trenbolone will jack your blood pressure up really high, and you won't even know it. And that, we all know, is very dangerous to the kidneys. So I'm telling you, less is better with trenbolone. Find that sweet spot, 50 milligrams 3 times a week of the acetate, 100 milligrams twice a week of the enanthate. I'm telling you, that's the perfect dosage. I've pretty much had all my clients try everything, and I just see the best results with that.
Let's go to Nico Cantemir. When you change your diet off-season to pre-contest, do you cut all the carbs to keto, or do you do it gradually?
I usually start off my guys on some days carbs, some days no carbs, like higher fat. So no one ever goes completely ketogenic unless I get a guy who comes to me or a girl who comes to me, and the girls are different because girls like to do ketogenic diets, but I might have a guy come to me and said, Dave, I got 8 weeks, I'm going on vacation or something like that. I want to lose as much weight as fast as possible, and they're really overweight. I might go right onto a ketogenic diet with them because I want to maximize every day we have to lose as much body fat as possible. For a guy who's preparing for a show and who's giving me plenty of notice, and they're like, hey, Dave, we got 18 weeks, I'm ready to start the diet. There's no reason to start that severely. I'm going to give them probably 3 days in a row of carbs, maybe one day with that's no carbs, and I'm going to start cycling that way. A lot of people talk about cycling carbs. I cycle fat days, when I first start, and then if necessary, I'll cut back on the amount of carb days they're having and give them more protein and fat days. But that's done gradually over a time. So there's no reason to do that, except, like you said, if there is a time constraint and a person wants to lose body fat as quickly as possible.
Um, so this question is for, I'm not going to try to pronounce the name, but it's about Chris Aceto. So obviously, we have gotten this question on different forums before, as far as, obviously Chris was very close to Cedric McMillan. He hadn't coached him in quite some time, but, he had coached him for a very long time and obviously led him to his 2017 Arnold Classic title. Yeah. We haven't really heard from Chris yet. I know, Dave, you were going to have a candid conversation with him at some point, I guess independent of Heavy Muscle Radio. First of all, beyond just that, how is he? I'm sure he's obviously very distraught over the course of the last few days. What can you tell the audience about your interactions with Chris?
Yeah. Well, Chris, outright said to me, I'm not ready to do the radio show for this week. And Chris never, if you saw the crazy schedule that him and I have, and we always find a way to make the radio show work every week. So for him not to want to do the radio, he just didn't want to talk about Cedric yet. He's not ready emotionally to handle to talk about it. And he definitely wants to do a show to talk about, like a tribute show to Cedric. I think we'll probably do it next week. That's why I give Chris the whole week just to kind of, figure out what's going on in his head and how he wants to, talk about Cedric. I'm sure he's going to give us some really amazing insights into Cedric and some of the funny stories, obviously, that Cedric and him experienced along the way. He probably spent more time alone with Cedric in different, crazy utility apartments and all the different, from Brazil to Europe. He was all over the place with him. So I think that Chris is hurt, obviously, after losing Roden and then Cedric, which were two guys that he was very close to. It takes a toll on you. I talked, I was feeling really depressed for a couple of days, and I couldn't figure out why. And I did. I think it was when I did Heavy Muscle Radio Sunday night with everyone. And after I talked about Cedric and told people how I felt like such a relief. It was like I did a psychiatry, session with a psychiatrist or a therapist, because it builds up inside us. You could, try to dismiss it, and even though because the person doesn't live with you or something like that. But when you hear enough people every single week, it's like someone else is passing. It does build up inside you, and look, I'm in my 50s. A lot of other guys are in their 40s and 50s, and that could happen to any of us. And so it's something that you have to come to grips with and understand. And that's why we've been doing these shows on education and talking about people, doing this in a responsible way. Because just to say, hey, let's get rid of bodybuilding is not really the answer. Obviously, it's being smart about bodybuilding.
We have a few questions on fasting, none of which, by the way, have to do with Ramadan, which we are now in week 3, and I'm fully in Ramadan.
You're very functional today. You sure you haven't been sneaking caffeine or something like that?
No. I'm totally faking it right now. Believe me. The second the show ends and the cameras are off, I'm going to be literally rolling around on the floor. From Live for Pump, I heard this on another channel. Your thoughts on fasting for 1 day a week to reset the digestive system. So, I'll break that up as far as off season. If you were to deploy that tactic, when would you best recommend to do that?
Right. I don't think for bodybuilding purposes, taking a whole day of not eating, I don't think that's going to be productive. Okay. Especially if you're interested in building muscle, maintaining that muscle, it's not smart. It's just, I'm not saying it's necessarily going to set you back, but I think it's going to throw a monkey wrench in what you're trying to accomplish. Now, if you do it during a pre-contest, you're going to wind up cheating because you're going to be starving to death, and it'll catch up to you. You think you got away with it, the next day or the 2 days later, you'll wind up eating everything in your refrigerator. So that's not going to do it. Off season, you don't really want to do that if you're trying to grow, because you're sabotaging 1 day a week. You can't do that. You're just going to wind up not gaining any muscle. Or if you do, you're going to eat it up on those days that you're not eating. So that's not viable. So, I developed a solution to that problem, which was a 3 week detox. Instead of doing a 1 day doing nothing, for 3 weeks, you're eating 12 hours out of the day, and you're restricting foods that act as an irritant on the digestive tract, foods that are necessarily stuff that might be considered toxins and stuff like that, caffeine and alcohol and stuff like that. And if you do this 3-week detox at the end, after your show's over and after you've eaten for a week or two to get it out of your system, that's the best time. So you're cleaning out, you're going off the drugs, you're doing this detox for 3 weeks, and I give it out for free. People can email me. I send it off to you for free. That's the time to detox. And I wouldn't suggest, like I said, unless you're just a guy who doesn't care and you're just trying to maintain a certain look, and that's something you want to do, you do it. I don't fast 1 day a week. I find that it's just too much. It screws up my moods. My blood sugar levels are all over the place. I can't. It's like I become non-functional for that day. So even just fasting the 1 day I had for the colonoscopy I had to do, and I was able to drink, clear fluids. So it wasn't really a true fast. I just don't feel good on those days. So I try to just maybe limit my food intake between a 12-hour window if I can, and I don't hit it every day. But some days I'll go 12 hours, without eating, and I feel like that's enough time to allow my body to get rid of toxins and give my digestive system a rest. Plus, I take a fiber supplement. Obviously, I take Fiberlize. I do probiotics, so I'm always cleansing my digestive system. And really, I think what happens is people try to make up for poor eating habits, poor nutrition, poor supplementation by doing something extreme like this, like a fast, like it's gonna alleviate their sins. It's like they want to go into church and confess 1 day a week to kind of release all the. Just eat well every day. Do your fiber every day. Do your probiotics if you need them. Take your supplements. Make yourself a regimen that you do and practice every day. It's like saying your prayers every day. If you say your prayers every day and you live a clean lifestyle, then you don't have to worry about trying to make up for the mistakes you've made. And I think that's we live in this culture where we want to just do everything quickly. All right, maybe if we could just do it 1 day a week and then we can do what we want the rest of the days of the week, then we're off the hook for it. That's not the way it works. The reason why the best bodybuilders are the best bodybuilders is because they do the same exact thing every single day, and that's why they get great results.
So we had another question relevant to intermittent fasting. When should you take GH while intermittent fasting? Before sleep, in the morning, or after a workout?
Well, if you're I'm assuming intermittent fasting, most people will stop eating at a certain time and they'll start eating. So let's say you stop eating at 10 o'clock at night and you don't eat till 10 o'clock the next morning, okay? You don't want to take your GH during that period of time because you're going to drop your blood sugar and then you're going to feel terrible. So I would take it in the morning, when you're going to eat your first meal, and that's when I would do most of my supplements and stuff like that. And then during that 10 hours that you're not, or that 12 hours that you're not eating, okay, if that's your period, some people go longer, 16 hours, 18 hours, whatever your period is when you're not eating, you're only going to drink water during those periods. You shouldn't take anything. So that's how I would break it up.
Time for a couple of more questions. Soren Papa, let's take a training question. What can I do to isolate my quads better during regular back squats if my posterior chain is stronger and tends to take over?
The squat is a great movement, especially if you're using full range of motion. When I talk about full range, I mean lowering your butt below parallel, okay, and controlling the weight on the way down, not just falling into it, squeezing on the way up. Every muscle group in your leg is going to work, from the hamstrings to the adductors to the glutes to the quads. People want to know how I can more isolate. You can't take them out of the movement. The quads are what's driving you. Driving the muscles. Driving the squat up. You have to use those muscles. I find that by opening the stance up a little bit more, you're going to hit more adductor, glute, but you're also going to engage a lot of the quads better. Sometimes when your legs are too close together, you are hitting quads, but it's like a really awkward angle and it torques your knee a little bit. And I find that people can't go all the way down because they're so bunched up. And if you have big hamstrings and calves, your hamstrings and calves hit each other to a certain degree when your legs are too close together and you can't go all the way down. So open your stance up wider than shoulder width, open your knees as you're coming down, and really engage all those muscle groups. There's no way you cannot stimulate quads. There's no way you cannot stimulate adductors. There's no way you cannot stimulate hamstrings and glutes. Everything gets worked. That's why it's such a complete movement, and that's why squats are the best mass-building movement for legs, because they engage all these muscle groups. Some people just have more dominant areas of their legs, just like some guys have great biceps and terrible triceps. Some guys have great triceps and small biceps. there's a genetic component to this too. So, your quads might just not be as dominant as your glutes, hamstrings, and adductors are. Everyone's body's completely different, And I found that when I would squat close, I felt it more in my quads, but I couldn't really go that heavy. I didn't have as much flexibility. I wasn't using full range of motion, and so I didn't get that much out of it. When I opened up my stance, I felt a lot more glute and adductor, but I also felt my quads engaging more because I was getting a full range of motion.
Team Redefined, and he asked this last week too, so I'll get it into the show. How is it possible esaclean simply doesn't exist anymore? Why doesn't anyone make it?
The problem with esaclean is that, which is the drug Formable, is that the problem is it doesn't build muscle. It's just an inflammatory compound. Now, having said that, I'm surprised no one hasn't tried to make it. It's a weird compound. If you remember it, if any of you guys used it, it was a very watery-ish compound, and I don't know if it had a weird smell to it. So I have a feeling the reagents that you need to solubilize this drug are probably just not readily available, and that's why no one has made it. Because pretty much everything else, and it's probably super expensive, I would assume too, because it's not something that a lot of people want. Remember, the things that people want the most, like testosterone, are going to be the cheapest because they're, it's supply and demand. If there's a high supply, and the companies that make this in China, the raw materials, they're going to create more of it because it's easier to move. For a compound like Formable, which probably a lot of people are not using, there's just no demand for it, so there's no reason to synthesize it. And if they do, it would probably be very expensive. But I am surprised no one has made it yet. Just like all these other underground companies, and maybe there is. I have a feeling it's always cost related. Why do you think there's not that much real primo out there? The primo prices are ridiculous. And you know what the funny thing is? The higher the prices, the more unavailable primo is, the higher the demand for it has become. And people think it's this wonder drug because it's not available, when the truth is that it's pretty much a long-acting winstrol. As far as the strength of it goes, it doesn't really do very much more than that. I'm actually going to do a video probably a little later this week about what drugs, increase your appetite. Primo, and one of the great things about Primo is it makes you really hungry, and that's why a lot of guys like to use it, but especially off season, even though it's not a strong drug, but it does open your appetite up a little bit, just like equipoise does. So why no one's making it, I don't know, but I have a feeling, once again, it's always the dollar sign that does that.
We're going to close out with this one. Last week, we closed out with another generational. What was it last week? It was. I
can't remember what I ate for breakfast this morning.
Ronnie and Dorian. Yeah, Ronnie and Dorian. Who was better? Well, this time we're going to. I know you discussed it in the past, but if you want to put it on the record right now, Nasser or Ramy, at their very best, in your opinion, the better bodybuilder?
It's a tough one. I have to go with Ramy only because he's Mr. Olympia, and Nasser never won it, even though he probably should have won it in '97. I think Ramy had a better back than Nasser. Nasser probably got harder than Ramy, but I think overall, physique-wise, I think Ramy's probably a more freakish, impressive bodybuilder. If they were both around today, I think Ramy would beat Nasser. So I have to go with Ramy. Once again, it's hard to bet against Mr. Olympia. And once again, Ramy's back is, especially when he first came around on the scene, it was, second to none and of the people competing. And Nasser always had problems with his back development. So it was wide, but it was like when he hit his back double, it wasn't quite as impressive. Ramy always had a really impressive, back double. Although in recent years, his back double seemed to have lost some of his lower lats. I don't know what that's from, but at their best, I think I got to go Ramy. Oh, that is because this Dave Palumbo guy just hates me because I have written bad things about him, and he will put me down. But if you want to take an IQ test, I know that I will crush Ramy because Ramy comes from the fishing village where they do not teach them very much. Nasser would turn it around completely on him. I love you, Ramy. I would pick Ramy even if I didn't believe it, just because Nasser was so negative and such a negative. No, I do think Ramy was the better bodybuilder.
But what you all just said right there, is that what Nasser is like? Up above saying right now, watching the show.
Yes, he's probably loving the fact that I'm talking about him and even giving him and bringing his name up. But Nasser and I had this like love-hate relationship. Like when we were together, it was like we were like friends. But I think Nasser didn't like me for whatever reason. I don't know. I think he was a little. I think he didn't like the fact that I was big and got a lot of attention and made some money, and I wasn't an IFBB pro. So he thought I was beneath him, that kind of thing. But he wouldn't say that to my face because he liked to soak me for information. He would always ask me questions about PEDs and diet and all this stuff. He liked to. Nasser loved to talk bodybuilding. He was always trying to absorb, soak in new information so that he can utilize it in his bodybuilding. That's what a good bodybuilder does. It's not a person who says, "Oh, I know everything and I can't learn." He was always trying to learn and figure out new stuff. So in that respect, I respect him. And he was a very intelligent guy. So it was interesting to sit down with him and be able to have an intelligent conversation with him. Except, like I've said before, if you had if your girlfriend was there with you and you had to go to the bathroom, you better take her with you because Nasser would certainly be trying to give her his number or the room key to his hotel room. Oh, we love you, Nasser. We miss you. You left us too soon.
I'll throw in one more. In the pantheon of uncrowned Mr. Olympias, where would you place him?
It's tough because it's a tough. There's a very tough field of people that fit in there between Flex Wheeler, who never, Kevin Levrone. These are two guys that definitely, could have been Mr. Olympia. Flex was closer even than Levrone, especially when he was battling Ronnie all those years. I would say Nasser's in that top three, though. I'd put him up there. Only because 97 he probably should have won the Olympia. It was really close. I don't think anyone would have complained if Nasser would have won. If Dorian was not Mr. Olympia at the time, the reigning Olympia, right, Nasser would have won. So he probably was the closest. Ronnie and Flex in 98, a lot of people thought that, Flex won. I don't think he did because I thought Ronnie outconditioned him. So I thought that was a well-deserved victory for Ronnie. But Flex certainly had a Mr. Olympia physique. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It's just he was competing in an era where guys were just unbelievable. And he left the door open a few times when he shouldn't have. And had he not left the door open, he probably would have been Mr. Olympia. And, you know how it works. Once you win once, it's really hard to lose the title if you come back and look great. So once Ronnie won in 98, that was it. It derailed Flex's, but Flex would have to be number one. I would say maybe Nasser and Levrone are tied for number two.
Who told us the story about Nasser in 97 when he was announced second, or at a certain point he stormed off the stage, right?
I don't know if he did or not. I was
there
too, and I don't remember. But
somebody told us the story where he blatantly started saying, "I was robbed of the Mr. Olympia title." Somebody told us that story.
I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't.
I'm gonna try to dig back to
Paul Dillette was mad at that show because Paul Dillette was fourth place, and then they took it away from him and gave him fifth place or something like that. They tallied it up wrong or something like that. But Nasser was a cat. Who did I just have on the show recently was telling me great Nasser stories too? I forget.
I know who you're talking about. Was on an episode of Iron Rage, right?
Yeah, was it? Yeah. Who was telling me these great stories about Nasser?
Oh my God, this was only a few weeks ago too.
Sid's got an excuse. He hasn't eaten all day for Ramadan. I have no excuse other than the fact that I'm losing my mind.
Oh man. Boy. On that note, that's going to do it for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. As we have done really for the course of the last few months, we go live Sunday nights with Heavy Muscle Radio. Hopefully we will have Chris Aceto back for that episode as well, but it's generally Dave, Chris, we have John Romano, Lee Priest rotating in and out of episodes. It's a lot of fun, and obviously the best part of it is that we have your live user interaction. So questions, comments, stuff that we're getting the live feedback throughout the course of the episode. It's a lot of fun for all of us, me included. I'm sitting on the producer chair, literally texting, hey, answer that comment, answer this. Yeah. It's a lot of fun, interactive forum, and it's on a Sunday night, late Sunday night. We generally do around 10, 11 p.m. Eastern. So for the West Coast, that's 8 p.m. So it's a pretty accessible time for most. And it's, again, it's just, it's really fun if you're really the bodybuilding nerd who likes to just kind of shoot the, But again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our show segments or updates. And of course, Iron Rage coming down the pipe tomorrow on the channel. For Tyler Shore and Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.